She thought the man behind the mask was her blind date, but he was the millionaire host. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below.
Oh no, my dress!
Thank you very much.
Emma.
Now, let us return to our main character. Emma Brooks adjusted the thin silver mask resting across her face as she stepped into the grand ballroom of the Crown Regent Hotel in New York. Gold light shimmered off the chandeliers, spilling across the polished marble floor. Hundreds
How could you
of
do this
masked
to me?
guests moved like an ocean of sequins and champagne
Tell me this
glasses.
isn't happening.
She hesitated by
I
the
love you
entrance,
too much for it to
clutching
just
her
end like
phone
this.
where a single message from her best friend glowed on the screen. Table 14. His name is James. Be confident. He is looking for someone genuine. Emma took a deep breath. A blind date at a Millionaire's charity gala was not her usual Friday night. She worked in a modest PR firm downtown, the kind of place where burnt coffee was a luxury and fluorescent light hummed louder than conversations. But tonight, she told herself, would be different. Maybe, for once, fate had a sense of humor. As she crossed the room, the jazz band slowed into a sultry rhythm. Couples spun under soft light. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Then, at table 14, she saw him, a tall man in a black tuxedo, silver and black mask, posture straight and calm, watching the stage as if he belonged to another world entirely. Their eyes met. He smiled first. "James?" she asked carefully. He stood, his voice low and smooth. "You must be Emma." Something in his tone, assured, deliberate, made her heart race. She sat down, pretending her hands were not trembling. He poured her wine and asked, "So, how long have you been with the foundation?" Emma blinked. "Foundation?" She assumed he meant her PR company's small charity work. "A few years," she answered quickly, smiling as if it were true. "And you?" "I started it about 10 years ago," he said, his eyes unreadable behind the mask. "Back then, it was just a dream." His words carried a weight she could not place. She thought he meant he worked for the foundation. She did not realize he had built it. For a moment, their conversation flowed easily, too easily. He spoke about the importance of kindness and the danger of pride. She listened, surprised by how grounded he sounded. Every word he said felt like a glimpse into something genuine, something she had not heard in years. Then he laughed softly, pulling a small black envelope from his pocket. "Keep this," he said, sliding it across the table. "It is your pass to the next event. It has my initials L.A. in case you forget who to look for. L.A." She smiled at the letters, thinking they stood for love affair or maybe lucky arrangement. She had no idea they stood for Leo Ardent. Before she could reply, the crowd erupted in applause as the auction began. The host's voice echoed from the stage, confident, familiar, the kind that made people listen. Emma turned toward the podium and froze. The man speaking sounded exactly like the one sitting in front of her. But he remained seated, silent, wineglass in hand. The voice on stage continued. "We thank our generous sponsors and everyone who made this night possible. Together, we will light the path of hope." Her heart skipped. The resemblance was uncanny tone, cadence, even pauses. She looked back at him, confused, but he only raised his glass and said, "You look like you have seen a ghost." She laughed nervously. "You sound like the host." He tilted his head, smiling behind the mask. "Maybe I am just good at imitation." That was the moment Emma should have realized something was off. But instead, she smiled back, caught between disbelief and curiosity, unaware that the man across from her was not her blind date. He was the millionaire host himself. And for reasons even he could not explain, he chose not to tell her the truth that night. The night after the masquerade, Emma could not sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw that man's smile behind the silver and black mask, heard his deep voice asking about kindness and pride. The memory of his words clung to her like perfume. She kept replaying the moment he said, "If fate is real, we will meet again." It was ridiculous, she told herself. He was just a stranger at a charity gala, probably some rich guest with good manners. But still, something about him felt different. Not just the mystery, but the sincerity behind every word. The next morning, the city felt colder than usual. Emma took the subway to work, clutching a half-empty coffee cup, while her phone buzzed nonstop with messages from her best friend Natalie. "So, how did it go? Did you meet James? You have been weirdly quiet. Spill it." Emma typed back, "I met someone, but I am not sure who." Quote. At the office, the fluorescent lights hummed as usual, papers scattered on desks, and coworkers argued about clients and deadlines. No one there would believe she had spent last night at the most luxurious ballroom in Manhattan, dancing with a man whose voice could stop a crowd. She sat at her desk, staring at the small black envelope with L.A. embossed in silver. She ran her thumb across the letters. Who was he? At lunch, Natalie cornered her. So, was he handsome? Emma laughed softly. Yes, but not in the usual way. More like, he sees everything, even when you try to hide. That sounds intense. Or creepy. Emma smiled. Both, maybe. That evening, she tried to focus on her work, editing press releases for a small local fundraiser, but her mind kept wandering. Curiosity burned stronger than caution. She opened her laptop and searched for Masquerade for Hope New York Crown Regent host. The first image that appeared made her freeze. A photo of the host on stage, unmasked, smiling under the golden lights. Underneath the picture, the caption read, Leo Ardent, founder and CEO of the Ardent Foundation. Her fingers trembled. L.A. Those initials were not a coincidence. She clicked through the articles. Every headline described him as the invisible philanthropist, the reclusive millionaire, a man who gives without wanting to be seen. Emma leaned back in her chair. Her mind spun. He knew. He knew she was not supposed to be there. He knew she was not a donor, not anyone important. And still, he had talked to her, listened to her, looked at her as if she mattered. That realization both thrilled and unsettled her. Later that week, while packing up for the night, her boss called her into the small conference room. Emma, I have something for you, he said. A big opportunity. The Ardent Foundation just reached out. They are hiring an external PR consultant for their next campaign. I think you should take it. Her heart nearly stopped. The Ardent Foundation? Yes, he said, not noticing the panic in her voice. They were impressed by your recent projects. This could be huge for you. She nodded, forcing a calm smile, though her pulse thundered in her ears. I would love to. As she walked home through the chilly streets of Manhattan, her mind replayed everything again, his eyes, his voice, that mysterious smile. If she accepted this job, she would see him again. She stopped by a storefront window, her reflection framed by city lights. For a moment, she wondered if fate was giving her a second chance, or setting a new trap. But deep down, she already knew the answer. Because despite her doubts, despite the warning bells in her chest, she whispered under her breath, maybe, just maybe. Fate does not miss twice. Goad. She slipped the black envelope into her bag, unaware that far above her, in a corner office overlooking the city, Leo Ardent was standing by the window of his penthouse, holding his own glass of wine, replaying her laughter in his mind. And for the first time in years, he smiled not as a philanthropist, not as a millionaire, but as a man who had just met someone who saw him without seeing his title. Emma arrived at the Ardent Foundation's headquarters 2 weeks later, her heart pounding as the elevator doors opened to a world of marble, glass, and quiet power. Everything gleamed, the kind of place where silence felt expensive. She clutched her folder of proposals tightly, pretending she belonged, pretending she was not the same woman who had accidentally flirted with the man running this empire. The receptionist led her to a conference room with a view of the city skyline. Mr. Ardent will join you shortly, she said with a polite smile. Emma froze. Mr. Ardent. She sat down slowly, the air feeling thinner with each second. Maybe it was not him. Maybe Leo was just a coincidence. But deep inside, she already knew the truth. The door opened, and the sound of expensive shoes clicked across the floor. She turned, and there he was. No mask this time, no shadows. Just those familiar gray eyes, calm and sharp under the daylight. For a heartbeat, neither of them spoke. Then Leo smiled. Miss Brooks, fate really has a sense of humor, does it not? Emma stood quickly, her face burning. You are the host. He nodded slightly. Guilty. You knew that night, she said, her voice barely steady. I did, he replied softly. And you knew nothing about me, which was refreshing. Her breath caught. So you let me believe you were someone else. I wanted to see what honesty felt like when no one was trying to impress me. Quote, the room went silent except for the hum of the city outside. She should have been angry, but instead, all she could feel was confusion, an odd mix of admiration and irritation. He gestured to the table. Shall we start? You have a proposal to present, and I have a reason to listen. The meeting began, but Emma could barely focus. He was effortlessly confident, listening intently as she explained her ideas for the foundation's upcoming campaign. When she spoke, he watched not in the way most powerful men did, waiting to interrupt but as if every word mattered. When the presentation ended, he leaned back, thoughtful. "You have something most consultants do not," he said. She frowned. "What is that?" "Heart," he said simply. "And courage. Two things money can never buy." The words hit her harder than she expected. As she gathered her papers, he added, "You did not get this job because of what happened at the gala. You got it because you deserve it." She met his eyes. "I do not want your pity." "You have my respect," he said, his tone even. "That is rarer." For a moment, the air felt heavy between them, like something unspoken was pressing against the glass walls. After the meeting, Emma left the building, her chest tight with mixed emotions. Outside, the city buzzed around her, cars honking, people rushing, but her mind was still in that room, trapped in those words. At a crosswalk, she pulled out her phone and stared at the picture of the black envelope. His initials, L.A., gleamed under the sunlight. She exhaled sharply. "What are you doing, Emma?" she whispered to herself. "You should walk away." But when the next day arrived, she found herself back at the foundation, this time working beside him. He greeted her with a simple nod, professional, polite, no mention of their first night. Days turned into weeks, their routines blending into quiet familiarity. They shared coffee breaks, brainstormed over long meetings, exchanged glances that said too much. Yet the secret between them remained a fragile thread holding them together, waiting to snap. One afternoon, as she walked past his office, she caught sight of something on his desk, the same silver and black mask from the gala resting beside his files. He looked up and met her gaze. "I keep it as a reminder," he said. "Of what?" she asked quietly. He paused. "That the best things in life come from mistakes we do not plan." Emma stood there for a moment, unable to move, unable to speak. Because deep down she realized she had already fallen for a man who had been honest only when he was pretending to be someone else. The following week, Emma tried to convince herself that working with Leo Ardent was just another job. She repeated that phrase in her head every morning while tying her hair, sipping her coffee, and boarding the crowded subway. It is just a job. But every time she saw him walk into a meeting room, calm and composed in his tailored suit, she felt that same nervous spark that had started under the golden lights of the ballroom. The Ardent Foundation's campaign was in full motion. Emma's small PR firm was handling the creative messaging, while Leo oversaw the final approvals. Their professional paths crossed constantly. What unsettled her most was how effortless he made everything seem. He never raised his voice, never appeared rushed, and yet everything bent around his quiet authority. One late afternoon, the office was nearly empty except for the two of them. Emma sat at her desk, reviewing design drafts, when Leo appeared by the doorway, holding 2 cups of coffee. "I thought you could use a break," he said simply. She looked up, surprised. "You brought me coffee?" He smiled faintly. "Do not sound so shocked. I am not that terrible of a boss." She accepted the cup, laughing softly. "I did not say that. I just did not think you knew how I take it." He leaned on the edge of her desk. "No sugar, extra foam. You mentioned it the day we met." Her laughter stopped. The memory hit her, the masked gala, the candlelight, the way he had poured her wine. He remembered everything. For a moment, silence stretched between them. Then he said quietly, "Emma, about that night?" She interrupted quickly. "We do not have to talk about it. It was just a misunderstanding." He studied her for a long moment. "Was it?" Her pulse quickened. She looked away, pretending to read an email. "You knew who I was. You knew I did not belong there. Why did you not say something?" "Because," he said softly, "for once, someone looked at me like a man, not a name, and I did not want that to end too quickly." Quote. The words stayed in the air, fragile and heavy. Emma could feel her heart beating in her throat. Then a sudden vibration broke the tension. Her phone buzzed with a new message from Natalie. "So, how is your new boss? Still mysterious?" She turned off the screen quickly. Leo noticed but said nothing. Instead, he pushed away from the desk and straightened his jacket. "We should get back to work. The board review is in the morning." He left, and she sat there staring at the untouched coffee. For the first time, she wished she could unfeel something she had never meant to feel. That night, Emma stayed late, finishing reports alone. Rain streaked across the tall glass windows, blurring the city lights into soft smears of gold and gray. She rubbed her eyes and gathered her files, but as she stepped toward the elevator, her heel caught the edge of a rug, sending papers flying. Before she could fall, strong hands caught her. "Careful," Leo said, his voice close enough for her to feel his breath. Their eyes met, For a few seconds, neither moved. The world outside faded into rain and silence. She pulled back quickly, flustered. "Thank you, I did not see that coming." He smiled gently, bending down to help her gather the scattered pages. As he did, something slipped from his jacket pocket, a folded black envelope worn at the edges. The same envelope from the gala. Emma froze. He noticed her stare and sighed. "I guess you recognize it. You kept it?" she asked quietly. "I keep reminders of moments that change how I see the world," he said, standing up. She looked at him, uncertain whether to be moved or angry. "You knew this would confuse me." "Maybe," he admitted. "But I also knew I could not let it go." He walked away, leaving her alone in the dim hallway, clutching the papers to her chest. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky. And for the first time since that night at the gala, Emma realized she was standing in the middle of something she could neither define nor walk away from. The next morning, Emma woke to gray skies and the heavy sound of rain against her apartment window. She pressed a hand to her forehead, still replaying last night in her mind, his hands catching her, his voice, the black envelope he still carried. She had told herself to forget about Leo Ardent, but how could she, when fate kept finding new ways to place him in her path? By 9 o'clock, she was already at the Ardent Foundation, early enough that the office halls were nearly empty. The scent of fresh coffee filled the air, and she hoped to bury herself in work, to focus on numbers, schedules, and reports anything but him. But as soon as she reached her desk, an email from the board landed in her inbox. All consultants must attend the project presentation at 11 a.m. in the executive conference room. Her chest tightened. She knew what that meant. At exactly 11, she entered the room, clutching her notes like armor. The board members were seated in a long row, their eyes sharp and polite. At the far end sat Leo, composed, unreadable, wearing a charcoal suit that made his presence even more magnetic. He gestured toward her. "Miss Brooks, would you begin?" Her voice was steady at first. She walked the room through her slides, branding strategies, audience engagement, social impact projections. Every sentence, every chart, every number, she had rehearsed 100 times. But halfway through, she glanced up and saw him watching her, not with criticism but something gentler, something almost proud. Her pulse quickened. She forced her focus back to the screen. When the presentation ended, the room filled with approving murmurs. One of the board members said, "Excellent work, Miss Brooks. This has potential." Leo leaned forward, hands folded. "Potential," he said calmly. "I would say this is already the direction we need." The room went quiet. His endorsement meant everything. Emma tried to smile, her face warm with a mix of pride and disbelief. After the meeting, as people filtered out, Leo approached her near the doorway. "You handled yourself well," he said. "Thank you," she replied quietly. "I did my best." He nodded. It was more than enough. For a moment they stood there in silence, the sound of rain faintly echoing from the tall windows. Then he said softly, "Would you walk with me?" She hesitated but followed him through the hallway lined with portraits of past charity events. He stopped before one, the photo from the Masquerade for Hope Gala. There, in the background, under the chandelier's light, she could just make out herself, laughing beside a man in a mask. "You see," he said quietly, "you were never supposed to be there that night." But maybe that was the point. Emma looked at the photo, then at him. "You think fate just arranges our mistakes for entertainment?" He smiled faintly. "Maybe not entertainment. Maybe lessons." Her voice trembled. "What lesson am I supposed to learn from this?" "That sometimes," he said, "the wrong door still leads you to the right room." For a heartbeat, she forgot how to breathe. He looked away first. "I know what people think about me, Emma. The headlines, the stories, the assumptions. But you looked at me without any of that. That is something I will not forget." She swallowed hard. "You should not say things like that." "Why not?" "Because I work for you," she whispered. He nodded slowly, the corner of his mouth lifting. "Then maybe I will be the one who needs to be careful." The air between them shifted, no longer professional but fragile, electric. Just then a voice echoed from the hallway. "Mr. Ardent, the press is here." He stepped back immediately, mask of composure sliding into place. "Duty calls," he said, his tone now formal again. "You did good work today, Miss Brooks." And just like that, he was gone. Emma stood alone, staring at the photograph, her reflection merging with the masked couple frozen in the golden frame. For the first time, she wondered whether this entire story, every misunderstanding, every spark was not fate at all, but a test of how much truth she was willing to face. The rain had stopped by morning, leaving the city washed clean and shimmering under pale sunlight. Inside the Ardent Foundation, a quiet hum filled the air. Emma arrived early again, but this time her thoughts were heavier than her workload. Every corner of the office reminded her of him, his voice during the presentation, his words about fate, the way he had looked at her and then walked away like nothing had happened. She tried to drown her thoughts in work. For hours, she sat behind her desk, reviewing donation reports and sponsor proposals, pretending that her pulse did not quicken every time she heard his footsteps down the hallway. By mid-afternoon, she was in the lobby waiting for an elevator when she heard a familiar voice behind her. "Miss Brooks." She turned. Leo was there, holding a file folder. His tone was professional, but his eyes held that quiet warmth she had come to recognize. "I was hoping to discuss the social outreach plan," he said. "Of course," she replied quickly. "Now?" He nodded. Conference room 3. The meeting room was empty and sunlit, the city stretching far beyond the glass walls. He placed the folder on the table and said, "I reviewed your new proposal. It is bold." "Too bold?" she asked. He smiled faintly. "Sometimes, bold is the only way people pay attention." They sat across from each other, going through notes and revisions. But as the discussion went on, the distance between them seemed to shrink not physically, but in energy. His focus, his tone, the quiet pauses, they all carried something unspoken. At one point she dropped a pen. As she reached for it, their hands brushed. A jolt of recognition shot through her chest. They both froze. He was the first to speak. "Emma." "Yes?" He hesitated, as if fighting himself. "You know, I still remember what you said at the gala, that the world needs more sincerity. I thought about it since that night." She looked at him, surprised. "You remembered that?" "I remember everything from that night." Her breath caught, and for a moment, neither moved. The sound of the city seemed distant. Then he said softly, "You think I am this untouchable man with too much money and too many walls. But the truth is, you see me clearer than most people ever have." She tried to speak, but her voice came out as a whisper. "Then why hide behind masks, literal or not?" He exhaled slowly. "Because sometimes when people know who you are, they stop hearing what you mean." That sentence lingered between them, heavy and honest. The elevator bell rang outside, a faint reminder of reality. Emma looked down, gripping her pen tightly. "Leo, I do not know what this is between us, but it cannot be part of my job." He leaned back, nodding slightly. "I know. You say that, but—" "I know," he repeated gently, "and I will not cross that line. But I will not pretend it does not exist either." Her heart twisted. She gathered her papers and stood. "I should go. There is still work to finish." "Go." As she turned to leave, her heel caught on the edge of the carpet. She stumbled, and before she could fall, he reached out just like that first night, catching her by the arm. The sudden contact sent her pulse racing. "Careful," he said quietly. When she straightened, something slipped from his pocket, a folded black envelope. The same one from the gala, edges worn, initials L.A., still shining faintly. She stared at it, then at him. "You still keep that?" He nodded. "I thought it might remind me not to lose the things that matter." Her eyes stung, emotion breaking through the wall she had built. "You kept it because of guilt, or because of me?" His voice softened. "Does it have to be one or the other?" For a long moment they stood there, silent, the city glowing gold behind them. Then she whispered, "You are impossible, Leo." He smiled faintly. "I have been told that before." "Goodbye." As she walked away, the question she did not dare ask echoed in her mind and in the hearts of everyone watching. What would you do if the person who lied to you was also the only one who truly saw you? For days after that afternoon in the conference room, Emma tried to pretend nothing had changed. She buried herself in meetings, in drafts, in endless revisions of campaign materials. But every time she caught Leo's reflection in the glass, every time he passed by her desk with that calm composure, her chest tightened. The secret between them had become heavier than words. The rain returned that week, washing the city in silver. The Ardent Foundation buzzed with preparations for their biggest charity event of the year. Emma worked late every night, coordinating media releases and sponsor lists. One evening, while reviewing final logistics, she overheard two senior staff members talking near the printer. "Did you hear about the consultant from PR?" one whispered. "The one Mr. Ardent handpicked?" the other replied. "Of course. The board is furious. She was never on the official guest list for the masquerade gala." Emma froze. The voices continued. "They think she manipulated her way in, and now he keeps defending her. People are starting to talk." Her stomach dropped. The words burned through her chest like ice. She wanted to step forward, to defend herself, but the humiliation rooted her in place. Later that night, she stormed into Leo's office. He was alone, working by lamplight, the skyline glittering behind him. He looked up, startled by the slam of the door. "Emma? Did you know?" she demanded. His eyes darkened. "Know what?" "That people are talking. That they think I lied my way into your gala. That they think I am here because of you." Quote. He stood slowly. "Emma, do not," she cut him off. "Do not say my name like that. You knew I was never supposed to be there that night, but you let it happen. You let me make a fool of myself, and now it is my reputation being torn apart." He took a careful step closer. "You are wrong. You earned your place here. I made sure the board saw your work." "You made sure?" she interrupted sharply. "So now everything they say is true?" The silence that followed was sharp enough to hurt. "Emma," he said quietly, "I never meant for you to be caught in this." "But you did nothing to stop it," she said, her voice trembling. "You wanted to see who I was without knowing who you were. Congratulations. Now you know exactly what I am, an embarrassment." She turned to leave, but his voice stopped her. "You think I do not care?" She faced him again, tears stinging her eyes. "If you cared, you would have told me the truth that night. You would have given me a choice." Quote. He took a breath, his expression breaking for the first time. "I wanted one night where I could be seen without the shadow of my name. I did not realize I was stealing yours in the process." For a moment, they just stared at each other, the weight of everything unsaid pressing down like gravity. "Do not," she whispered, her voice raw. "Do not make this sound noble. You lied to me, Leo. You made me believe in something that was never real." He stepped forward. "It was real to me." Quote. Her tears fell before she could stop them. "Then that is the problem. It was real to you only when it was safe for you." The air between them broke like glass. She turned, opened the door, and walked out without looking back. Leo stood there, motionless, the faint sound of her heels fading down the hallway. Then he looked down at his desk, where the black envelope still rested beside a glass of untouched wine. He picked it up slowly, tracing the faded silver letters L.A., before slipping it into the drawer and closing it softly. Outside, the storm deepened. Lightning illuminated the city skyline as rain blurred the windows. In that moment, both of them stood in different rooms, under the same storm, haunted by the same thought that neither dared to say out loud. Some mistakes are fated to meet twice, once to bring two people together, and again to tear them apart. A week passed, but to Emma, it felt like a lifetime. Her name lingered in office whispers, her email filled with polite but distant replies, and every hallway seemed to echo with her own doubt. She stopped taking the elevator to the top floor. She stopped looking for him. The board had postponed the charity campaign's launch after the rumors. Her manager said the project had lost momentum without Leo's final approval. Emma knew the real reason everything had frozen because of her. That Friday evening, she was cleaning out her desk when she heard a familiar voice behind her. "You are leaving early." She turned. Leo stood in the doorway, raincoat draped over his arm. His expression was unreadable, his voice calm, but there was a quiet urgency beneath it. "I have nothing left to finish," she said without looking at him. "Emma, please." She stopped packing, exhaling sharply. "What is it, Leo? Another lesson in fate? Another explanation that makes everything sound noble?" He took a step closer. "I owe you an apology, not an explanation." She laughed bitterly. "Apologies do not change anything." "No," he admitted, "but action does." He handed her a folder. Inside was a revised campaign plan with her name listed as the creative lead. She frowned. "What is this?" "The board refused to move forward without a statement from me," he said. "So I told them the truth, that you were never on the guest list, that you were not supposed to be there that night, and that you are the only reason the project has a soul worth saving." Her hands trembled. "You said that to them?" He nodded. "Every word. The donors were skeptical at first, but when they saw your presentation, they agreed. The new gala will happen next week, and you will be the face of it." Emma stared at him, speechless. "You did not have to do this." "Yes," he said softly. "I did." I quote. For a moment, the room was filled with silence, broken only by the distant sound of rain. She looked up at him, her eyes searching for deceit, but found none. "Why?" she finally asked. "Why fight for me after everything?" He hesitated, then said, "Because I was wrong. I thought hiding my name would help me find truth, but it only made me a coward. You reminded me what real integrity looks like." The words hit her like a quiet confession. He took a breath. If you still want to walk away after the event, I will not stop you. But at least let me prove that you belong here not because of me, but because you earned it." She closed the folder slowly. "What about the board? The rumors?" He smiled faintly. "Let them talk. I would rather defend the truth than live comfortably in a lie." Something in his tone made her chest tighten. She nodded once, her voice barely a whisper. "All right, but this time, it is about the work, nothing else." "Good." "Agreed," he said, though the look in his eyes told a different story. The following week, the event arrived. The ballroom gleamed under golden chandeliers again, but this time, Emma was not a stranger in borrowed elegance. She stood on stage, presenting the foundation's campaign to an audience of investors, journalists, and dreamers. Her voice was steady, confident, alive. When the applause erupted, she caught Leo's gaze from across the room. He did not smile like before, he simply nodded, a silent acknowledgement that they had both found something worth saving. After the ceremony, as the guests mingled, Leo approached the podium. He thanked the sponsors, the volunteers, and finally, he turned toward Emma. "Tonight's success," he said clearly, "belongs to the woman who reminded us all that true vision comes from the heart, not from status." The crowd applauded again, but Emma stood frozen. The spotlight burned bright, her throat tight with emotion. She wanted to look away, but she could not, because for the first time, he was not hiding behind masks or words. He was simply Leo, and for the first time, she believed him. The gala had ended hours ago, but the lights of the city still shimmered through the tall windows of the Crown Regent rooftop terrace. The air was calm, soft jazz played faintly from below, and the faint hum of traffic rose from the streets of Manhattan. Emma stood alone by the railing, the night wind lifting her hair as she stared out at the skyline. She could still hear his voice echoing from the stage. True vision comes from the heart, not from status. The applause, the cameras, the crowd, all of it had faded, but those words stayed with her. Because for the first time, she knew he had not said them for the world. He had said them for her. Behind her, the door opened quietly. Footsteps approached, unhurried, familiar. "You are hard to find," Leo said, his voice warm but softer than usual. She did not turn immediately. "Maybe I wanted it that way." He stopped a few feet away. "You handled yourself beautifully tonight. I was just doing my job." He smiled faintly. "You always say that, but it is never just a job with you." Silence lingered between them, filled with the rhythm of the city. Then Emma finally turned to face him. He was no longer in his formal jacket, just a crisp white shirt, sleeves rolled up, the top button undone. The man behind the mask, quite literally, stood before her. "You look different tonight," she said quietly. He laughed softly. "No mask, remember?" "Right," she replied. "No mask." For a moment they simply looked at each other. Two people who had spent weeks hiding behind professionalism and fear, now stripped down to honesty. "Leo," she said finally, "what happens now?" He leaned on the railing beside her. "That depends on what you want to happen." "I do not know," she admitted. "I am still trying to make sense of everything. You lied to me, but you also helped me. You confused me, but you also believed in me." He nodded slowly. "I earned the confusion part. The rest, I can only hope to deserve." She looked out at the lights again. "You know, when I first met you, I thought you were someone ordinary. Maybe that is why I liked you. I could talk without thinking about who you were." "And now that you know?" he asked. She smiled faintly. "Now I see that you are still ordinary in the ways that matter." He chuckled quietly. "That might be the nicest thing anyone has ever said to me." She turned to face him again, her expression serious. "You cannot fix what happened with grand gestures, Leo. I do not need a savior. I just need honesty." "I know," he said softly. "That is what I am offering. No masks, no assumptions, just me." He hesitated, then added, "But if I am being honest, I do not want this to end here. Not with distance, not with regret." Emma took a slow breath. "You are asking for something complicated." "Maybe," he said, "but every good thing usually is." For a long moment neither spoke. The city stretched endlessly before them, alive with movement and light. Then, almost without thinking, she extended her hand toward him. He looked down at it, then back up at her face. "Are you sure?" She smiled softly. "Next time, let us meet without any masks, not even fates." His hand closed gently around hers. "Then it will not be a blind date anymore. Only the right one," she whispered. He stepped closer, their hands still intertwined, the city glowing beneath them like a sea of stars. For the first time since that night, there were no misunderstandings, no roles to play, no distance to keep. Only two people who had stumbled through mistakes and found something real on the other side. The wind carried the last of the music from below, and the lights from the skyline flickered like applause. Leo looked at her and said, "I once thought fate was just coincidence. Now I know it is the universe's way of giving us second chances." Emma smiled. "Then let us not waste ours." As they stood together, the night stretched quietly around them, no masks, no lies, just truth. And in that moment, the story that began with a mistake finally found its way home.